Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all to the second panel discussion of Sustainability Summit 2022, focusing on the topic of incorporating sustainability and sustainable
Recording in
development
progress.
goals into project planning and execution. My name is Randima, and I will be your host for tonight. In the early 1970s, Earth came upon its first ecological footprint overshoot, which is to say that for the first time, humanity used more resources in a year than the planet could effectively regenerate in that same time period. Since then, year after year, this trend has continued, and right now, it is estimated that humanity uses the equivalent of nearly twice the resources generated by Earth, which is to say that we need nearly two Earths to sustain our current lifestyles. With this backdrop looming over all of us, it has become a necessity for each and every one of us to look to sustainability as a solution to integrate and incorporate its concepts to everything that we do in an effort to improve our dire circumstances. But this is no easy feat. There are many challenges, economical, social, and even technological, that restrict us from reaching this objective. Uh, may I please ask everybody to mute themselves? Thank you. And which is why, with this context in mind, it is important that we get all the knowledge and wisdom from experts for us to go forward with our own initiatives, which is why that we have invited a panel of experts in the field of sustainability to enlighten us and make our paths a little bit clearer going forward. Without further ado, allow me to introduce to you our first panelist for this evening, Mr. Sumit Liyanage. Mr. Sumit Liyanage is a research and development professional with over 18 years of experience in the field. With ample experience in product development, quality and innovation, operational excellence, product quality, nutrition and safety, and project management, Mr. Sumit is currently working as the head of development in food and refreshments at Unilever Sri Lanka Limited. Mr. Sumit, it's a pleasure to have you here. Next up, I would like to introduce to you our second panelist for the evening, Ms. Amanti Pereira. A sustainability practitioner throughout her entire career, Ms. Amanti has been working in this field since 1999, and she boasts experience in a multitude of sectors in Sri Lanka. Ms. Amanti currently holds the post of Head of Social Sustainability at MAS Holdings and has been in the core team involved with the formulation of sustainability strategy at the organization. Ms. Amanti, glad to have you here. And of course, our third panelist for the evening is none other than Mr. Ruanta Katuga. With over a decade of experience, Mr. Ruanta has worked for several top conglomerates in the country, such as Laugh Holdings, MAS Holdings, and Brandix Apparel Limited as the communications and sustainability manager. Currently, Mr. Ruanta is heavily involved in the development sector, contributing to multiple initiatives all around the country. Mr. Ruanta, it's an absolute privilege to have you with us tonight. As they say, let us begin from the very beginning. Mr. Sumit, I would like to direct this first question towards you. Mr. Sumit, in your opinion, what is sustainable project management and execution, and how does it differ from
Thanks, Randima, and good evening to everyone. I think nice to see so many of you again in this panel. I think to discuss on a very important topic today. So, to answer the question, as you see, sustainable management and traditional project management. So both are processes. Basically, both are project management approaches towards the business. But whereas traditional project management basically deals with components which are linked to revenue and profit generations. Yeah, so there could be many textbook definitions, but this is in a nutshell basic difference between sustainable project management and a traditional project management. But apart from this, there are very evident differences between the two. If you take sustainable project management, the word itself say it should be sustainable. So normally those projects are quite long-term basis, but traditional, of course, there could be few of long-term basis, but many of it's either short-term or medium-term basis. That is one of the difference. The other difference is sustainable project management. You might need specific skills and knowledge to run those projects, whereas traditional projects could be run with a general understanding of how do we manage the whole process of project management. So that is the second difference apart from the first one, the major one which I said before. And the third one would be, see, as I said, sustainable projects are mostly envisioned in a company. Yeah, so it has to be begin with setting up your goals and then a laid out plan to achieve those objectives. So otherwise, in between a project, it is very difficult to plug in sustainable targets in a project because it has multitude of complexities to handle. So it is normally a complex process of handling its own part because there are so many external engagements and external uncertainties in handling sustainable projects. Whereas traditional project management is, I think, since it is towards profit management and revenue generation, it is well-oiled engine-like, and it is somebody who really take over and run with the projects, and then there are results coming in. So those are in principle few similarities and differences between sustainable project management and traditional project management. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumit. I think that explanation laid the foundation for the rest of our discussion today. So thank you for that. And next up, the next question will be directed towards Ms. Amanti. Ms. Amanti, projects are often temporary, being usually categorized as either short-term or long-term. However, when it comes to sustainability, it's always focused on the long term. It's far outlasting the conclusion of the project. With this requirement in mind, what steps does your company take to ensure that the impacts of the projects are way longer than the project itself?
Thank you, Randima. That's an interesting question. Having said that, I think in the outset, it's very important to understand that short-term projects and long-term projects are both needed, right? And be it in whatever sector you are coming from, point of view of a private sector or development sector, or even the state, right? you have certain abilities and certain sphere of influence which you can activate upon. But having said that, it is a little myopic to think that you will be the end-to-end solution for any problem, right? So over here, I think the focus really more than, the length or, functionality of a project is really what is the impact that you want to make? What is the final sort of outcome? What does success look like? Those are the questions that we ask ourselves, and many corporates and development sector organizations ask themselves when they embark on any project. You might not be there to see the right end of it, but you do know that it is a start towards certain things and the baton needs to be passed on. So understanding this, I think, is very important. For instance, when you get into a project, it's very important to ask yourself, what does success look like? What are you trying to change? What is the core problem? Because otherwise you might look at short-term solutions that might in itself cause another problem, right? I'll just take an example. Everyone has heard about the MAS ocean strainer. It has become such a huge story, right? It looks like, one of those very amazing stories of, science being used, applied, and here is a solution, and now we can just replicate it across, and, it seems like a very, very clear-cut story. But there's a lot of legwork that went into that, right? Making a solution that works to actually strain some of our canals and collect the debris and the plastics is one. But having a sense of ownership, figuring out who's going to remove that plastic, what happens to the plastic that's removed, right? Is it causing a problem in some other landfill, etc.? Who else is going to benefit? What about the localities where these canals are? How does that community get tied into this problem, right? Because the best solutions we've learned year on year through our work, and I'm sure Sumit and Wanta would agree, you realize that the best answers lie in the communities from which they originate, right? The communities are very well keyed in. We act as catalysts, right? So even when you look at the ocean strainer, the gentleman who cleans it out goes on that little raft and takes out that plastic is a gentleman from the community, right? And he makes sure that, this is something he takes pride in, and he makes sure that, that waste is collected. And then you work with the local government and the right channels of permission to make sure that it goes to a proper sort of a waste management solution. So it's really important that when you really look at short-term or long-term projects, to ask yourself the question, what does success look like? Is it just me? Who should I partner with? Who really knows the answer to these problems? And very likely it's not you, right? Knowing that and understanding that you're only going to be a catalyst, you might have a solution that might fall on its face. Asking the questions and being brave enough to really face that might not be the solution. Being brave enough to open up to, this is how we made mistakes in the past, this is what we do in the future. So it's a little bit of real logical working that really helps projects really outlast and, have tangible outcome and impact. So I hope that answers your question, but it really is about people looking at who are the stakeholders, what's the problem you're trying to solve, and being open to collaboration.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Amanti. That was actually really clear that you brought in that example of the ocean strainer and how the communities are actually integral part of the solutions that we form. So yes, that was actually really clear. So thank you very much, Ms. Amanti. And before we move on to the next question, I would like to remind the participants that the attendance link will be posted, has already been posted on the chat box. Please make sure that you go through this link and fill your attendance. Okay. Moving on, the next question I would like to direct towards Mr. Ruanta. Mr. Ruanta, considering the current economic and political atmosphere of the country, of Sri Lanka, is sustainability in planning and execution still a viable path? Is it a luxury or an investment that we can't afford at the moment? Or is it actually part of the solution to getting out of the crisis?
Ayubowan. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's an absolute pleasure to be again in a forum with Rotaract. So diving deep to the question, it is part of the solution. I think if we can all go back in time to, I think, year 2019, December 31st, we were thinking that this 2020 decade would be the time of our lives. We were having the best days of our lives. You know, we never thought we would wake up a couple of months later to a pandemic like this. This is a crisis that we never actually thought even in our dreams that would happen. And now, 2 years later, we are still looking for solutions. So there have been certain things that we have been talking for years, like the climate crisis, resource scarcity, things like that. Although we hear about those things, we know those things are coming, we are experiencing certain things, but we don't imagine it hitting us right now in the face tomorrow morning. But this is an eye-opener for everyone, this pandemic, that things like this can happen anytime. And if we don't take action, especially sustainable action, we will not going to survive for a very long time. And again, like as Amanti told, certain short-term solutions might not help at all. That is where sustainable planning and sustainable projects and implementation and thought comes into play. Because even right now in the pandemic, we see a lot of short-term solutions. When something happens, we are very reactive. We are not looking at the long term. This can happen. Another wave is coming. Another crisis is waiting to happen. We are not getting geared up to face the future. We are just being reactive when something happens. And that's the action that we are planning to do all the time. So that is not very sustainable. And that has not really gotten us very far at all. And the future is very dark, it seems. And hopefully we will survive, all of us, if we plan and act in a more sustainable way. So I think we should all consider the people, planet, and the economic aspects when we come together to do certain initiatives that find solutions. And as well as what Amanti spoke about, addressing root causes and diving deep into the problem and understanding. Because as an organization or let's say a volunteer group or as a public or individual, we might have our own interpretation of a problem which we see from our eyes. But when you go to the ground level, when you go to the root causes, it might be something different that the real problem is. So when we try to provide solutions, our solutions might not really match up to the real problem. Example, I mean, there are organizations, they align their sustainable strategies and their sustainability focuses on the products and the focuses they have in their organizations. So example, if you're an organization that develops sanitation equipment, soap and hygienic equipments, if you're providing something back to a community, if you're providing some of your products as a hamper or as a gift or something, but the community does not even have connectivity to water, it doesn't really matter giving those things to them. So we should actually, as organizations or individuals who are trying to initiate good back to the society, to the environment, we should always consider what the real situation is and provide sustainable, holistic solutions to real problems. And I think it's not only an investment that we all have to make as organizations, as groups, or even as individuals, but it's an investment that will have returns, and we should work on it right now, because tomorrow might not be the best day to start it. So I think this crisis, this pandemic has opened all of our eyes, and this challenge, although it's a very dark time, I believe it is a time of change for all of us to think about and consider all of those things and plan ahead in a sustainable way. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruanta. That was actually a really good point that you came across, brought across. That how, as a country, that we've all been reactive in our plans and our actions so far. We've never taken initiative. We've never taken. We rarely take proactive actions. We always end up just treating the symptoms rather than addressing the root cause of our problems. So that was a very enlightening speech that you gave, a bit of information. So thank you so much, Mr. Ruanta. And moving on, I would like to direct my next question to Mr. Sumit. Mr. Sumit, what are the difficulties and challenges faced when incorporating sustainability to different aspects of your company concerning different projects? For example, how easy or difficult is it to incorporate sustainability into the manufacturing division of the company compared to the marketing division of the company? Over to you, Mr. Sumit.
Yeah, Andima. So, see, first of all, any project is going to be difficult, be it for sustainable or traditional project management. None of projects are easy. Yeah, but sustainable projects, I would say we shouldn't be individualized or make it targeted at different departments. I think if you want to see a success in sustainable project, the project has to be owned by the entire organization and entire employees. Yeah, so that's the basic need of it. So it is not about one individual. Probably you could have certain skills and capabilities, and you could have that vision as a leader, but your employees, your colleagues, and everyone has to really own it and be accountable of each part of this process of sustainable project. Then only you can see a success of a project. Because Sandeep asked about Unilever, my company, so I will give a perspective from a company. So for Unilever, it hasn't. For me, I think in Unilever, not much of hurdles or much of difficulties in communicating or administrating certain projects, especially in terms of sustainability. Why? Because I will explain it, then I think the context can be applied to many. There is, I think it is high and low for many companies, I guess. It depends. So I cannot generalize the difficulty or easiness of approach of implementing sustainable projects in companies or organization, but it's a spectrum, I would say. So at Unilever, so for us, sustainability has been at very heart of what we do in the business. Our purpose, which is I think very much similar to Rotaract, what you have. So our purpose itself, say the sustainable, we are trying to make a sustainable living a commonplace for everyone, which is I think very similar what you have in your purpose in your Rotaract. So what we're trying to do is with this we are trying to achieve our sustainable growth goal with a support of a fundamental support of the vision, which we call as compass. With that vision, there are three areas what we are focusing on. One is to improve the health and health of the planet. The second one is to improve the people's health, confidence, and the well-being. And the third one is to contribute a fair and more socially inclusive world. Yeah, so those are the things what we do in Unilever. So since it is being built into the vision and the mission, so and there is nice structure and process of how you handle sustainable project, there are very less difficulties in implementing this project, as I said. But there are many areas which some companies could struggle, because the first question what normally a manager would ask is, what is in it? So basically, I don't see how does it fit to my business case. So if it doesn't fit to my business case, how do I measure the success of this embarkment, what we are trying to say? So this is the typical question a manager would ask when you discuss about sustainable projects. So you need to first overcome that. Yeah, how do you overcome that? First, as I said, I think I know Mars and a few other companies locally also, there is well structured plan and well set goals in their organization. So when you have a structure and set of nice goal to achieve these kind of projects, it's much easier. So when you don't have such kind of structure, and then it is becoming either individual goal or a certain department goal, then it's very difficult. It's always a struggle when you have this subdivision targets as sustainable goal. Yeah, as I said, you could be the expert, but this has to be a holistic approach to achieve that. Yeah, other than that, I think it's the culture. Yeah, how do you achieve these sustainable projects? Each and individual employee, or each and everyone in the company or the organization needs to understand the value of sustainable projects, and that dealing of supply chain sustainability projects in different departments. What are the elements of accountabilities of individuals as well as departments? They need to really understand. You can do that only when there is a culture in the organization to look at things from a broader term and see things from a company perspective and long term, saying that why it is important to have sustainable projects in the company or in the organization. When you have those elements overall, I don't think any company would see a difficulty in implementation, as long as there is commitment towards that, there is allocation in terms of budgets. See, I mean, sustainability also in a company, we are talking about business. It has to be linked to the business, but look at those projects in different perspectives. So as long as you have these basic supporting structures, Randima, I don't think any organization would struggle to implement.
Thank you, Mr. Sumit. I actually agree with you there wholeheartedly about how sustainability is a holistic approach. You can't have subdivisions in a company when it comes to sustainability with their own individual goals. That will most probably just create conflict within the divisions of the company, and not help the company as a collective reach their main objectives regarding sustainability. And I actually appreciate you mentioning the whole concept of creating a culture of sustainability. That's actually a really valuable point, I feel, because even through Sustainability Summit, this initiative itself, one of our major objectives is to create a culture of sustainability within Rotaract. We've come a long way since we've adopted the SDG, the 17 SDG goals into Rotaract, but we still have a long way to go. And I feel like this initiative would help immensely in doing that. And that idea of a culture of sustainability will reinforce the individual responsibilities of each and every Rotaract involved in this movement. So thank you, Mr. Sumit, for your valuable insight regarding that topic. So moving forward, the next question I would actually like to direct towards Miss Amanti. Miss Amanti, what benefits has your company enjoyed through its transition to sustainable project management? And what benefits could one expect from incorporating sustainability into projects?
So, firstly, I think benefits is a luxurious word when used with sustainability, right? It gives you the feeling that this is optional, right? We'd like to consider sustainability as a requirement, right? When you consider something like, say, nutrition, right? You all know that you've got to do exercise, you've got to eat a balanced meal and rest adequately if you are to live, right? This is not optional, right? So I think first and foremost, anybody approaching sustainability really has to have that viewpoint that this is licensed to operate, right? Thinking of the world actually revolving around the human race is where this problem has started. We are just one spoke, right? And, if the last 2 years are anything to get by, you can see that Mother Earth can continue with or without us, right? And probably at this stage, maybe better off without us, right? And maybe this is, just to speak to the kind of younger crowd, this is like the Thanos happening in reality, right? Wipe out half the population, everything's back to ground zero, Earth overshoot, they will be great, things like that. So I think first of all, considering that, this is something that might reap benefits is probably the wrong viewpoint to go after, right? This is licensed to operate, we need to do it. We're living in a planet with finite resources. We are working with unimaginable disparities among people and communities, right? And no one's going to benefit if it continues, right? You can't have a world-class facility or a world-class company in a community where people don't know where their fresh water is coming from, where they're ravaged by things like drug abuse or violence against women, right? That's not a culture that's going to grow even if your company looks like something out of Singapore, right? So it's really important to first understand that you go towards this because it's your responsibility, right? But having said that, I'd just like to focus just for everyone young around this conversation on some unexpected positives that came out of it. We obviously know why we're doing it. We have a proper intention. We go after it, and we own up to what went right, what went wrong, and that's how the sustainability project management works. But if I'm to take an example of 2020, when the pandemic hit, and a story that I'm really proud of, right, is what happened with some of our communities when we really, looked at how can we help people when there was a sudden lockdown, and we looked at communities, what can we do? This is long before we could sit down, analyze the problem. 2021, we were all gung-ho about what we're going to do for COVID. But 2020, it was just March 12th, March 13th, and we were told schools are closing. By 16th, everything hit the ceiling and everyone was told stay at home. So you had no time to plan, etc. So we did the big projects, obviously, knowing that a pandemic was coming in. Yes, MAS made sure that they got the right sort of material quickly available to make personal protective gear, right? Because they knew the hospitals, etc., would need it. The government had reached out and told the big apparel manufacturers, listen, we're going to need this. We quickly got down. We got the R&I, as in we got our best designers quickly having conversations with the right people to realize, how this can be done. We were making it as we go, finding out how to improve it. So many innovations came out of it. Those are the big projects, right, that really helped. But alongside that, We reached out and we asked our communities and our people saying, what are the biggest problems you're facing? Yes, most of us were on Pick Me and all of that in Colombo. We knew where to get our supplies. But you have your father or mother living off Kilinochchi, right? They don't operate a smartphone. They don't know what shop is open, right? They're on a prepaid package. So they can't be calling 10 shops and finding out, do you have dal? Do you have rice? Do you deliver? So lots of our executives who were at home really stepped on board to call up localities where they are familiar with. So if you're from Chilao and you're a young person and you're well connected, you kind of called up all the shops you verified if they were delivering, if they had a curfew pass, and you gave that information back to our central office. And there we made a sort of a directory of companies and of shops that were delivering various essentials, right? And we had it even at an Excel download so that someone could be like, Ammi Tati, I'm calling up this shop, they are going to deliver to your house, right? So that you take that onus and burden away from the elderly, the vulnerable, people who didn't have, the means of the way we got connected and got our supplies. So when you look at that, you see what is the unexpected benefit? You see young people really finding purpose, right? These are executives who are not in the sustainability area. They might have been a merchandiser, they might have been in sales, they might have been, accountants or, a finance or HR legal folk, but they all stepped in, and you found out that people have this other muscle, right? They have an inner consciousness, right? They want to do good, even when you're facing uncertainty, that you look at other people. So things like that, I think, are the unexpected benefits, right? The non-tangible benefits of really helping people find purpose, being grateful for what you have, right? We could all sit and make a fuss about 100 things going around us right now, right? But the moment you help out, the moment you look at a social issue, right, you realize how your problems pale in comparison. And so I think the unexpected benefit is that we saw a workforce that was really motivated in a very demotivating time, understanding of why they're doing what they do and how it helps in the bigger picture. That's one of the unexpected positives. The other was also the different skills that you identified in people, the different networks that you build, right? Because sustainability cuts across. While we might compete, right? You might look at MAS, Brandix, Hydromoney, all, after the same customers or, after the same, business. But when it comes to sustainability, there's no one winner, right? It's no use of MAS just being the best in Sri Lanka in an area of sustainability. That's not going to move the needle. If you're doing some project and you need scale, you reach out to be it your competition, be it to other corporates, be it to other sectors, and you work collectively. So those are some of the benefits. It cuts across some of the bureaucracy and boundaries that you have developed or have been developed from a very myopic point of view. So that's just two examples of what I would say are unexpected positives, right? Not really where you're going after benefits, because if you're going after benefits to do sustainability, I think, you're wrong at the get-go itself. So that's basically it.
Thank you, Ms. Amanti. That was actually a really interesting point that you made. Even when it comes to companies, sustainability and corporate social responsibility as a whole shouldn't be a profit-oriented thing. It's all about accountability that all of us share. All of us share collectively, and even companies are actually part of that responsibility, that holistic responsibility that we have towards our environment and the rest of the world, actually. So thank you, Ms. Amanti, for that interesting point that you made. And moving forward, the next question, I would actually like to direct again to Mr. Sumit.
Hello, Randima.
Sustainability in project execution and planning aren't as widely discussed. What are the implications of incorporating sustainability into project management and execution on the various administrative aspects of a company? For example, what are the implications of this on legal regulations, health and safety, management structure, etc.? Mr. Sumit, over to you.
Yeah, Randima. So I think Amanti also captured a lot of it. I think so. As I said in the previous answer, also, this is going to be part of organization culture, and also the effort should come within. Yeah, the motivation should come within. So I wouldn't have used the word administration. Rather, I would have used something like just run it as is, like a well-oiled engine. So, but however, saying that there are, since this is a cultural change, a different way of working, there could be many difficulties, many challenges, and different departments in the organization. If you ask if there is any in Unilever, there are some, but as I said, since it is already in the structure, already in vision, one cannot argue and one cannot complain that this why it is to be done, why I am accountable of doing that, because it's part of our culture and part of what we need to do to the society and to the planet and to the environment, basically. So but however, since you asked me kind of challenges a certain organization administrative structure would have, let me just elaborate what are those are. I think maybe we could see some challenges already. Amanti would have those challenges, I know, while executing those sustainable projects. Let me elaborate a few administrative structures, like when you ask legal and regulation. See, when a company does certain projects, especially sustainability, you need to really communicate this with consumers, your shareholders, your government agencies, etc., because that's part of shareholder management of a company. If I take a company only, but maybe for Rotaract, you need to communicate what you do to your principals, to your colleagues, etc. So in sustainable area, the matrix what you have to measure the success of sustainability, or the limits or the boundaries where somebody would say, yes, you have achieved these certain goals of sustainability related. So it is not that streamlined. So a lot of difficulties in understand. There is no one common measurement to really see what the success of sustainable projects. So there is a little bit of ambiguity. And of course, with the sustainable projects, the other side of it, especially for corporate, many people try to say you are trying to do something, but you are greenwashing. Yeah. So companies want to really get away with those labels as well. So it's quite dicey. So this is where I think legal and regulatory structures really have to work, because they will have extra work. Definitely, it is not like a company-owned project you are in. There are many complexities, external stakeholders engaged. You have to really streamline your discussion, stakeholder discussion, engagement, and see where those communications required to be done and how you should be doing, and what is that interest in different stakeholders in the society, in government, etc. This is where I think the legal and regulatory managers really need to work hard to streamline, because nothing should backfire against the company, because then it's a losing end approach for the company, because then it's demotivation for the employee itself. So there are a lot to do by the company legal and regulatory personnel. The other one is health and safety. Yeah, health and safety is paramount in any organization. Yeah. Now, with sustainability projects, the difficulty is you are dealing with many uncertainties in external world. Yeah, this is where I think the struggle comes. Yeah, no matter what you do, nothing should compromise the safety and health of people who works and the society you're going to implement those projects. So you have to be really careful on what you are doing. The action has to be doubly checked for what's the outcome and what areas of risk you have in your actions. So little bit of more work to the health and safety departments or people who deals with that. But in general also, as I said, it is not easy to implement or administrate sustainable projects in an organization or in a company when there is no structure, when there is no culture, and that habit is not imbibed into the daily doings of people. Yeah. So there'll be a lot of pushing around and trying to convince people to do what and try to make people accountable of doing things. Yeah. It is that process itself not sustainable. So forget about doing a sustainable project. The process of handling project or managing people itself going to be tough. So it is not sustainable at all. So you have to begin with begin the journey with a proper structure which has a sustainability. Then your sustainable projects, so any projects will come to a good ending. So this is how I would like to end this answer.
Thank you, Mr. Sumit. I think that was really clear. Sustainability should not be a liability to a company. It should be something that is favorable, and all these structures and all these levels of bureaucracy, legal regulations, health and safety aspects of a company, they're all in place to make sure that sustainability takes root in the company in the proper way and everything is streamlined. So thank you again, Mr. Sumit. And with that topic, I would like to continue from the same tone to related topic. And I would like to direct this question towards Ms. Amanti. In Sri Lanka, there are still many companies that haven't adopted sustainability into their activities. How difficult is it for large companies with a lot of bureaucracy in their governance to transition to a more sustainable approach in their project management, considering the implications to administration? Ms. Amanti, over to you.
Thanks, Randima. I think lots of people spoke of this, and Ruanta particularly also touched upon the pandemic and how we've come out of a certain way of thinking, etc. So first of all, I mean, I'm pretty positive on the fact that the time has never been better than now, because people have had time to reflect, recalibrate. And the sheer volatility of the way things have worked have made people less possessive of their plans, right? So we are at the cusp of really making good and lasting change, right? And everybody feels it, though everyone might not know how to get about it. We've seen bureaucracy turned on its head, right? Departments that would probably have said, sorry, flexible working is not for us, have had flexibility being brought in, right? Have had hybrid models, right? We've had financial management completely changing. We do certain things like long-range plans, 3-year plans, etc. Right now, along with that, we are doing best case, worst case scenario planning, where we are having multiple financial planning. We're looking at 6 months turnaround to, really consider whether we change, we change direction, look at, how things are going and then decide to do something else. All of that has come and it has changed the way the world has worked for years, right? So if at all, I think this is the best point where lots of companies, big or small, have found out that they can change. And that change isn't a bad thing, right? So what are the biggest stumbling blocks to this? I think, and this is something Sumit touched upon, it's our point of view of looking at everything from just a financial capital. Having said this, I must say that definitely as private sector companies, we have a job of work, which is to generate profit so that people work and people earn and development takes place. And that is a focus, right? And there is a role for everyone to play, and the connectivity to your business, this is not something that I am disregarding. Like Sumit said, there has to be a tie into why you do a certain thing, right? Not every company will go and save the leopard. Not every company will go and do oceans plastic, right? It has to make sense. It has to be, operationally something that is connected, right? And you have to look at where is your biggest impact, where is your biggest footprint, how can you, really exercise good change, what are you good at? Because you might not be good at a lot of things, right? But let's get back to this point of financial capital, right? If you look at the integrated reporting and the thinking today, right? If from a sustainability point of view, we really speak of these 6 capitals, right? So this might become a little bit of a sustainability 101, but I think it's important for us to understand, and many of you here would. You learn of the 6 capitals framework, which looks at financial capital, which is obvious, the money you have, for the production of goods or the provision of services. And the funds obtained from the financing, from debt, etc. But you also look at manufactured capital, right? Again, something that companies would understand a little bit better. What is the wealth of the physical objects? If you look at infrastructure, the roads, the buildings, we know that that's also valuable. Then we look at intellectual capital, and then a few companies are also very much aware that there is tacit knowledge, things that we know, rights, licenses, which are very important. And then today we are very cognizant that there is a human capital, the people we've invested on, the knowledge they have, etc. But what we think less of is actually the social and relationship capital, right? What is it that the communities give us, right? Tomorrow, if the communities can't stand the sight of you, you wouldn't be able to operate, right? So your reputation is a tangible capital, right? And doing the right thing is important, right? Trust and willingness of people to work with you, right? How well the community operates, like I spoke of earlier, right? Are there problems in that community? Is there some intrinsic, like lack of nutrition or a health problem? All of that is also a capital that you need to manage. It's not somebody else's business. It's not the government. It's not, a development sector. If you are in that neighborhood, it's your problem as well, right? So if you look at all these capitals, and finally the natural capital, right? The water is not going to just remain there for you to take unless you make sure and you invest on it being regenerated, right? So if you don't consider your social relationship and natural capital, it's going to come to bite you at some point. The moment you look at your 6 capitals framework, the science behind it becomes easier. You're not looking at, what is your ROI on this? Is it 1 year, 2 year? What is the other capital that you're growing through this project, right? Yes, your financial capital can't go down completely and you can't be in the red because you're doing a sustainability project, right? But, what is it that you're gaining? So looking at this, and also from a point of view of value creation. Today in integrated reporting, we talk of value creation, right? I'm not making apparel. What am I doing? I am giving clothing solutions that will let people operate into the best of their capacity. be it an athlete, the best in his capacity, right? Be it somebody with a disability, the best in their capacity. That's the value. So going back to what is the value you're creating, and creating your business out of value is one way that organizations can really look at. So I think, the approach to this project management is, and considering the implications, all of that can be, solved if you really look at what is the value you're bringing, right? And what is the value the community gives back to you. Then it is very easy to go back, be it even a large organization, be it a state organization, be it something with a very complex sort of leadership, right? It's about talking to people. And I think we've spoken about administration. I'd replace that word with leadership, right? You need to speak to your leadership and convince them. Every sustainability practitioner cannot be seated speaking to a group of converted, right? You have to speak to the hardcore managers, the hardcore financial analysts, and be able to, get down to their level and understand what they're going through and be able to still make a viable case. So that is where every scientist, every sustainability practitioner has a responsibility. It just can't be, I know this is the right thing to do. I don't know why everyone else is not getting it. We're all doomed kind of conversation, right? If they're not getting it, then sit down, try to understand why they're not getting it. Because it's not just good enough to have, found a solution if it's not going to be utilized. And that goes for every bit of research that we're finding out and not, putting into practice.
Thank you, Ms. Amanti. I mean, if there's one thing good that came out of the pandemic, it's our realization that all these rigid structures that have existed for years on end, decades upon decades, that we were so convinced that they couldn't change, they've all been toppled, and they've all been forced to be flexible if they needed to operate. And I suppose, just like you said, that's more or less the approach that all these companies would have to take with sustainability as well, because it has now turned into a necessity. It has become a dire need for all of us, not just companies, the entire population of planet Earth equally. And yes, it has. It's all about reanalyzing your needs and the company's objectives and their priorities in this matter. Thank you again, Ms. Amanti, for that valuable insight. Next up, I would like to switch to a bit of a broader topic, and I would like to direct this question towards Mr. Ruanta. Mr. Ruanta, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are a major topic when it comes to sustainability in general. How have the SDGs affected project initiation, planning, and execution from a company perspective? And what specific SDGs do you tend to pay more attention to? Mr. Ruanta, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I think in the olden days, organizations just did charity. When I joined my first assignment in Brandix, we were just given charity work, like, CSR was not even in the picture. But then it moved and evolved to be having a more structured approach, and organizations becoming more responsible along with their practices internally as well as external practices. So modern day organizations have now embraced sustainable principles, including various reporting practices. It has been a trend because being an ethical and sustainable organization means you do good in business, and not only good in business, that your consumer, your employees, and even your suppliers, everyone associates with your organization is happy doing business with you. So I think above all, these organizations who have sustainable practices, ethical practices inbuilt to their processes, do better in businesses. and most major corporates in Sri Lanka have somewhat of sustainable principles incorporated into their strategies, their company policies and practices. And sustainable development goals have provided a direction for many of these organizations to continue that journey. If you take, like, rather than traditional conventional ad hoc initiatives, SDGs actually provides a framework you can monitor, record, and also see your contribution towards the global goals. That, in my opinion, would be the answer for your first part of the question. Secondly, you were asking about what are the most popular sustainable development goals. I believe many of you know about sustainable development goals. There are 17 goals. And I cannot say that there is one goal that is more popular with all the organizations. It all depends on the type of organization, and it has a lot of aspects into it. Depends on the sustainable strategy, the vision of the organization, the products they market, and the image they want to portray. Which sort of sustainable development goals they would focus on depends on all of that. And also, if the organization focuses more about internal practices, or whether the organization focuses about more external practices. Example, if you're an organization that focuses on building sustainable practices within the organization, then the goals that the organization might focus on might be reducing inequalities, labor practices, responsible consumption, industry innovations, decent work, that sort of goals. But if you're an organization that focuses on externally supporting communities, providing sustainable solutions for various problems in the environment or society or the economy, then you would more focus on climate action, education, poverty elevation, and various other SDGs like that. So it all depends on the focus you have as an organization. And also, certain organizations have certain preferences. Example, one of the organizations I work for had a focus, sustainability focus on water. And another had a sustainability focus on providing decent work for young people, because the organization portrayed an entrepreneurial background, and it wanted to portray the leadership as contributing towards generating decent jobs for young people, connecting young people with innovative solutions, and providing them lifelines and to their economic backgrounds. So all depends on the organizational sustainability strategy, the vision the organization has, as well as what type of the organization it is. So I think that would be the sort of most popular sustainable development goals. But if you ask me directly, I would say most organizations would take climate action as one of the key components in their sustainability strategy and their initiative. So that is, I believe, might be a more popular one in current context.
Thank you, Mr. Ruant. Yeah, I have to actually agree with you. That's the whole idea of the sustainable development goals, giving companies structure and guidance. That's something that we as Rotaractors can actually relate to. The whole Rotaract movement has been doing more or less the same thing with all our initiatives, all our projects. When we initiate all these projects, we try our best to align these projects with the sustainable development goals, right? And and I'm glad that you mentioned the whole idea of structure, because moving forth to the next question, which should also be directed towards Mr. Ruanta, the UN has also specified 169 targets or indicators under the SDGs. Does this give companies more guidance and direction when executing projects, or does it restrict and overcomplicate matters? Mr. Ruant, over to you.
Absolutely not. I think becoming a sustainable organization itself, it's not an easy thing to do. So you need proper guidance, you need proper framework, you need proper targets to go towards to. You cannot do ad hoc initiatives and call yourself a sustainable organization, because it's a bigger process, it's a bigger journey, it's a longer journey, and it takes a lot of steps to go there. So of course, having a framework, having targets will help that journey, because or else we'll be all doing ad hoc initiatives thinking that it would contribute towards climate action, you know, just doing something small and we would hope it will contribute towards climate action. But actually, as I started in my earlier question as well, it might not be the real issue that the real solutions are required for. So having a structured approach, having goals and a direction would really help organizations achieve that, because sustainable development goals are not only for Sri Lankans or a specific organization, it's global goals. So what we are actually achieving is a small part of contribution to the global requirement, the global sustainable development agenda. So as a tiny country, as a tiny organization, as a tiny individual, we are all contributing towards that bigger goal, not working in silos and doing our own thing, hoping that it would create a better day. But these goals are there for a sustainable future. So I believe that does not restrict organizations, but it actually gives proper guidance and a direction for that long journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruanta. As you said, all these goals are in place to make things more specific, actually easier for all of us. On a strategic level, the sustainable development goals, the 17 sustainable development goals are important in having the big picture perspective of everything, having a main objective. But when it comes to initiating things in the operational level, when you are initiating specific projects, it's really important that the 169 indicators, SDG indicators, are taken into account, because they specify exactly what all of these sustainable development goals actually mean and what they actually require from our end to achieve in the end. So thank you again, Mr. Ruanta Katugaha. Next up, I'm actually approaching the final question of this panel discussion. This question I would actually like to direct towards all three of the panelists here. So Rotaract is one of the major youth movements in the country and in the world at the moment, executing thousands of service projects every year in Sri Lanka alone. From your personal experience, working extensively in the field of sustainability, what advice could you give to Rotaractors and all such youth movements in general about sustainable project management and execution? I would actually like to start with Mr. Sumit, if possible.
Yeah, Randima.
Yes.
I'm a middle of a result of unsustainable actions. So there's a power cut. so I don't want to appear as a ghost from a dark background. So I have to just switch off my video. So you can see the results of unsustainable activities quite prominently. So however, saying that, I will just answer to what you asked. So basically, today youth, if you say they are much more powerful than, if I take my case, they are much more powerful today. Today youth play a significant role in implementation, monitoring, and review of agendas, maybe in organization, maybe in societies, but maybe holding governments in accountable of things. That's powerful youth is. So with a political commitment and adequate resources given to young people, they have enormous potential of making things effective and make things very much formation that will bring a world a better place for all of us. Yeah, that is I would say a beginning of how powerful they are. Before I go on, I would like to really appreciate what Rotaract is doing. I was going through your website, global as well as your, I cannot remember the number, district 3.2 something, right? 3.2 something, yeah.
Yeah,
And
3.2.0.
yes. I went through your work and it is quite stupendous what you have been doing. Please keep it up. So that is to start with some cherish we should have as a group, I guess, Randima. Yeah. So I think that gives you a different context also, because today youth is much more powerful. They are willing to work towards sustainable projects, and they have ample opportunities for experimentations, exploration, and contributes towards society. This also, I think, bring in an element of being the focus is taken out. Yeah. And also this promote the multitasking. Yeah, so you have to be careful in balancing these two, because especially from a sustainable project management, it shouldn't be a greenwash movement. Yeah, it has to be a proper approach, and it shouldn't be labeled as a greenwashing by anybody. Yeah. So for people in Rotaract, what I want to ask is, does these activities connect to your inner motivation? Does it link to your inner purpose of doing things? Are you doing these things because of you want to do and it's coming from inside? Or otherwise you want to just follow the herd and say, I have done this and that, and I am ticking off one of element in my CV for a better employability? That is the first question you should ask youth. Does these activities connect into your inner purpose in your life? Yeah. First, understand what's your inner purpose. I think when you understand your inner purpose of life, and then you think about sustainable project, when those things connect together, it's beautiful. The word is beautiful, and then the wonders will come. Yeah. And the second thing, yeah. If you see most of the activities in Sri Lanka, but there are few, I would say it is exceptional, but most of the activities are focused on Western province or maybe few selected districts in the island. But my humble request is, can you take it outside Western province or few selected districts only? Take to the rural area, many rural areas. Get people involved in, yeah, because I think for you, it is much easier and much fruitful of making things from there. Then I think when people see things are happening from ground root level elsewhere, the entire nation will be behind you. So I think about it. So go outside Western and selected a few districts. That's the second thing. Yeah. And third element I want to tell you is, see, sustainability as a subject and as a project management element, it is quite diverse. It is ever changing. The technologies, the skills you have to possess, the knowledge you have to have, yeah, it's ever changing. Not many universities, not many curriculums teach those. So probably you have to learn those skills and have those areas of knowledge to really implement those activities, because the context becomes ever complex. So you need to have that skill level and the knowledge. So go through training and identify your skill gaps. Identify as an organization, maybe as a Rotaract, identify what is your skill level, gap in your skill level. What is the gap in your knowledge level as an organization as well as leading individual. Evaluate those gaps and try and see how do you bridge the gap into to upskill and upskill and up your knowledge on those areas. That's the third one. And lastly, I think, see, Ruanta spoken about popular demand of SDGs. Yeah, but I think I would like to urge Rotaract and the youth there. Think about the situation where we are in the countries. We are in a dire situation due to pandemic, economic downturn because of different bad policies. I wouldn't use bad, just cut off. Maybe non-appropriate use of policies. The country is in a dire situation. So there are 17 SDGs and many activities. But think it very seriously. Understand what are those few SDG areas this country needs. Those may not be very popular. So don't go by popular us, but really understand what this country needs and work towards that. Have your projects focus on those focused SDGs the country needs, the society needs. And then I think what Amanti said, then your energy is very much focused. You are not greenwashing yourself. You are not doing it because others are doing, maybe some other organization doing. There is focus, but there's a real focus. And then with this approach, we can get support from everywhere, be it for UN, be it for local government. The support will be there, be it for a private organization like that, will be behind you guys. When you have the focus, I think you will get all the support. So those are the 4 key areas I would like to you to focus. And you are the leaders and you are the critical thinkers of this nation, and you are innovators, of course, good communicators. So I think with all those blessings, I would want to wish you all the very best in your future endeavors as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sumit, for joining even with the inconvenience that has befallen you. And I think that was a really comprehensive, thorough, and systematic approach to the question that was posed towards you. Thank you so much for your insight and wisdom imparted on all of us, all of the Rotaractors and all the youth in this audience. Next up, I would actually like to get the opinion and insight from Ms. Amanti. Ms. Amanti, over to you.
Thanks, Randima. And so I listened to Sumit, and Sumit, you already touched on I think you spoke about the needs analysis, right? Looking at where things really matter on educating. So I'm not going to speak of those two. I think it's very important that you are, constantly learning. That's what makes you stronger. And as Rotaractors, I think that's important. But let me just go into one other area. As much as understanding problems and needs analysis is important, also concentrate on getting feedback, right? When you finish a project, it doesn't end there. Your next project is only as strong as the feedback you got. How much time did you have to reflect on what could have been done better, what worked, what didn't work, right? Where were the gaps, and what you can do to fix it. I think when you are a voluntary organization of people coming together, you have limited time, competing priorities. So sometimes when the project ends, then, that group takes a breather. But take that breather after you do your feedback, right? And make sure you document it so that, the next group is not starting from zero, reinventing the wheel, right? So that you will, take the baton and run. Even small projects, smaller groups can really do with good feedback and understanding how well something worked or didn't work. So get feedback. It's one of your strongest allies. When you start getting feedback, that's when you realize that, that's a tool that many of us don't use, right? So one thing that I'd like to say is that the other thing, the power that you have is you are less restricted than an organization or a department in how diverse you can become. Use that to your advantage. And here by diversity, I mean in your membership. Yes, you might be brought together by certain things like, the Rotaract Club of a certain university etc. So you might have commonalities, but when you work on projects, work with different partners who bring in a muscle you don't have, right? So, even if you collaborate the way Sumit said, even if you are to go and work in a rural area, find the strongest player in that area, work with them, learn from them, and they'll learn from you. So diversifying is important for all of us. So make sure you diversify both in thought, in membership, and in approach, right? So diversifying is another thing I'd like to leave you with. And that's where I said about execution and partnerships. And the last thing I'd like to say is that when you speak about things, when you approach partnering, there has been a change in how even corporates view partnerships, right? We no longer are comfortable or want to sit just as the philanthropic arm that provides the funding, right? And both in the development sector and every other sector, you're seeing this, right? We want to bring something to the table, like give our people opportunity to take part, contribute, right? We are working with groups of people who might not have the luxury to work in passion projects, right? But we want to give our workforce also purpose. So always build into your project a kind of actionable or a learning part or an engagement function for your partners, right? So that they don't just remain as the people who wrote the check or turned up on the award ceremony day, right? They want to take part. They want to be a part of your problem analysis, of your planning, etc., right? And it's increasingly going to be like that because the risk there is, because of the limitation of funding, everyone is going to be very careful about where they park their money or what they help out on. So be that organization that always gives something more, right? Gets people engaged, works towards, because if you can give purpose to people, they will get involved, right? So give them something to do. Say that, through this, we'll call for 20 volunteers from your organization to also learn this and work with us on a project. That way, you will also build your pipeline. These people will end up also joining your Rotaract clubs and things like that. So it's very important that you approach everybody with an ability to contribute, not just in funding, but in kind and in knowledge, etc., because everyone would like to really get more hands-on. So good luck to the Rotaract, and I think this is a really great start. Just seeing these summits that are coming up, seeing that, over 130 people were there when we started, and we still have over 100 people on a eve of a long weekend after a pretty tough week of, power cuts and everything. That shows that you are a passionate bunch and you can spread that germ, right? So go ahead, and that's something worth, being a super spreader about, right? Take your enthusiasm and feed it to other people.
Thank you so much, Ms. Samanthi. Yes, that whole idea about getting your feedback, that is really important when it comes to especially our projects. It gives you the opportunity to quantify the impact that you've done to the community, and just relate into what you said earlier. Most of the time, the solutions are in the community itself, right? So getting feedback about your initiatives is a good chance. It's a good opportunity to get all these different diverse ideas from the communities itself that you're working for. So again, thank you, Ms. Amanti, for joining with us today. It was a very enlightening answer from you. And Mr. Ruanta, lastly, I would turn to you.
Thank you, Randima. It was a great evening. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it was a pleasure being a panelist with this awesome two panelists as well. So I'm not a Rotaractor, but I have wonderful experiences contributing to some of your projects, as well as some experiences working with you in partnership with several projects. I don't want to mention the Rotaract club's names because this is a bigger forum, but I have really good experiences working with young people like you who are very passionate about contributing and giving back to the environment and the communities. So the only thing that I can add more value, apart from all these things that the previous panelists spoke about, is actually to emphasize more about looking into the root causes of what the requirements are in the society, in the environment, in the economy, whatever the way in your initiatives are planning to be done in. Because as an example, if you take an initiative which you give, let's say, Christmas gift for street children, that is a very good noble activity. But do you think that is the most biggest thing that they require? Look what real needs they have. Do they have access to education, health, nutrition? Are they living in a safe environment where child abuse, child labor, exploitation is widely there? So try to understand your impact groups, your project impact, the beneficiaries, and understand the root causes that you need to provide solutions through your projects from. Because young people are very innovative, energetic, and very diverse. And I have seen so many very creative initiatives, good fundraisers initiated by Rotaract, and it has been very popular and a name that everybody knows. So keep up doing the great work that you are doing that brings impactful changes to our country, the communities, and the environment and the economy. You are a diverse group of young people who are innovative again, and this is an experience of a lifetime for you, and your youth will never come back. So what you're doing right now, I know that most of you are enjoying it and doing it, and that's a great thing. And keep enjoying what you do, and make sure that you look into providing solutions, projects, and look into doing things in a more holistic and sustainable way. And always best to keep in partnership and connections. As Amanti said, we don't want to work as individuals, but if we work together, we can go a longer journey with a bigger impact. So all the best, keep in touch for partnership opportunities, and always do take care. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Ruanta. If we work together, we can go a long journey. That's a beautiful sentiment to conclude this event with. And thank you again, Mr. Ruanta. I would like to remind everyone here that the attendance link will be posted again. It has been posted in the chat box of this meeting. Please go to this link and confirm your attendance. And with that, we have finally run out of time for this session, and we've come to the conclusion of this long event. Once again, I would like to thank our esteemed panelists, Mr. Sumit, Ms. Amanti, and Mr. Ruanta for joining with us today, despite their busy schedules and despite the electricity outages and everything. Thank you so much. You added great value to this initiative, and it would be a tremendous deal in going forward with our own Rotaract initiatives. Your wisdom, your knowledge that you imparted to all of us today, it's going to be a huge investment to all of us going forward. Thank you. And also, I must not forget the chairpersons and the organizing committee who worked tirelessly to make this event a success. And lastly, thank you to all of you who joined with us today. As Ms. Amanti said, on the eve of a very long weekend and stuck with us till the very end. We sincerely hope that you obtain something useful, something valuable for your Rotaract journey and your life in general from today's session. And please do not forget that a third panel discussion is also on its way, which will be announced in due course. So stay tuned. And again, thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you. Stay safe. Have a great long holiday.